Hi, and welcome to This Week in Evansville. I'm Johnny Kincaid. I want to thank you for taking a few minutes to join us here on our program that focuses on things that are of concern, things that matter to people in Southwest Indiana and around the Evansville area more specifically. Big thank you to my friend Janet Douglas and her crew at Citygate in Evansville. That's where we do the show from, is Citygate Studios. And they've done a wonderful job setting us up with studio facilities. They can do the same thing for you. I'd be happy to share the details with you if you just drop me a note at thisweekinevansville@gmail.com. So it's kind of a bonus episode this week because there's so much stuff that we can talk about here that we want to get to. We're going to talk about the legislative session, where we're at in it because we're past the midway point, what bills are surviving and are drawing still more attention. We'll also talk about the track records for introducing bills for each one of the Southwest Indiana legislators. Plus, I'll give you some tools that you can use to be able to track the movement of those bills for yourself. We're also going to talk about some Hoosiers who are very publicly locking horns on the national stage. That'll be coming up in just a little bit as well. But we're going to start off with a lawsuit that's been filed by a Gibson County woman against the Evansville Police Department and one of their officers. The woman filed a lawsuit with the American Civil Liberties Union, kind of leading the charge on this, saying that an Evansville police officer patted her down, searched her car, and then towed the vehicle for no legal reason whatsoever. Kendra Owen is that lady. She's an Uber driver from Gibson County, and the suit was filed this past week in the U.S. District Court. Owen says that she had an alert placed on her when she took part in First Amendment auditing activities several years ago. Okay, so first of all, an explanation about the First Amendment auditing activity. This is where citizens legally film around public spaces like post offices or government buildings. She was involved in doing that in 2017 and 2018. And when she was confronted by law enforcement officers back at that time, they labeled her as being uncooperative. And I didn't realize, honestly, that there was such a thing as putting an alert on somebody's name so that when they come up in the system, the officer is told that this person has been uncooperative and so on down the line. Didn't know that that happened. The activity that the police have allegedly listed Owen in their system, and because of her activity, they've listed her as suspicious. All right. It sounds to me, and there's nothing to confirm this, but it kind of sounds to me from the fact that she just doesn't want to identify herself, share any ID or any information about who she is with police officers, that this may be kind of a sovereign citizen sort of scenario for her, and that might be why some of this is shaking out the way that it is and the reason for the lawsuit. If you're not familiar with the sovereign citizen thing, go and look it up. It makes for some pretty interesting reading in getting down to the beliefs of the sovereign citizens. Now, after the suit was filed, this is the part of this that I really like, the Evansville Police Department said, we can't comment on ongoing litigation. So we're going to keep our mouths closed, but we're going to release all of the body cam footage from that night, which they did. The officer involved is Matthew Taylor, and EPD released that body cam footage so that the whole world can take a look. Now, when Taylor approached the car, he informed Owen that he's doing an investigatory stop. Now, here's the thing. Owen was parked. She was not driving. She was parked, sitting in an unmoving car with the motor running because it was a cold night in January. And she was sitting in front of a bank. Now, that may not be fully the reason why Officer Taylor decided to stop and talk to her, because the other part of that, it could be that, maybe he thought he wanted to check and see if she had been driving under the influence and just decided to pull over to the side of the road or something to that effect. And if a person is sitting in the driver's seat of a motor vehicle with the motor running, that is considered operating a motor vehicle. when you're operating a motor vehicle, you're required, when an officer asks for it, to provide a copy of your driver's license as well as your insurance information and the vehicle registration. So it happened that Owen was on her shift as an Uber driver. This was on January 14th, about 11:30 at night. She parked her car on West Illinois Street near the Franklin Street Bar District, and I read her the lawsuit that was filed, and she left her motor running while she was sitting there because it was cold, and that she was just waiting for some rides to come down as people decide to leave some of the bars in that district. That's when Officer Taylor showed up. And according to the lawsuit, when Taylor radioed in for a check on the vehicle, dispatchers informed him that there was an alert on Owen. So what we're going to do is let you see a little bit of this, just so you get a feel for it from the body cam footage. We're not going to show you the whole thing because there's a ton of footage there. But we'll show you just a little bit of that encounter between Officer Taylor and Ms. Owen. And the thing of it is that the audio picks up when he's standing at the car. So when he radioed in his check, that audio is not on this body cam footage. So here's a little bit of that footage from EPD.
Okay, whatever.
Can I see your license, please? And actually, you're operating a motor vehicle, so I can ask for your license, registration, and insurance. You're sitting in the driver's seat for the vehicle? Yes, ma'am. And if everything is okay, I will send you on your way, but at the same time, I'm going to check on you. It's the reason I get paid. So will you please provide your license, registration, and insurance, ma'am?
I am parked. This is not a traffic.
Ma'am, under Indiana law, if you're in the driver's seat and the vehicle is operating, it is considered operating a motor vehicle. So please, will you provide your driver's license, registration, and insurance? If we don't want to do that, then I can ask you to step out of the vehicle because under state law, I'm allowed to do that. Will you please provide me with your ID, ma'am? Sam 3-1, start me another car, please. Do me a favor, turn around and face the vehicle for me, please.
Oh, sorry.
Turn around and face the vehicle, put your hands on the vehicle. Anything that's going to poke me, hurt me, stick me, anything like that. Okay. Step to the back of the vehicle, please. What is your name, ma'am?
I'm not giving you my ID. I was legally parked on a public street.
Is the vehicle registered to you, ma'am?
Yes, it is.
Can I have your name, please?
No.
Do me a favor, have a seat right there on the curb for me.
Well, I can't sit down, so I'm happy to do this. That's the best I can do.
Do you have insurance for the vehicle, ma'am?
Sorry?
Do you have insurance for the vehicle, ma'am?
Yes, I do. And we both know they'll tell you that when you
Sam
run
3-1,
the
go
tag.
ahead.
All right, so there you can see that Owen was being, I guess, somewhat uncooperative with the officer. She believed that he had no right to ask her for any kind of identification, so thereby she was not going to provide it. She remained very adamant about that, right? All the way up until he calls for a tow truck, and they come and load her vehicle onto the truck and drive away with it because the big thing was not showing an insurance card, proof that you have insurance on the vehicle. So her vehicle got towed. It's cold as blazes out because it's January 14th, 11:30 at night. And then the officer left her there on the sidewalk while she had to wait because she's from Gibson County. The reason that point's important is because it was going to be a half an hour wait for her to get a ride. If it were me, even playing the sovereign citizen thing out, I think that I would finally cave in and just say, okay, here's the paperwork. Don't tow my car. We'll be watching this suit and see what all comes down. By the way, there was a ticket written for Miss Owen. The charge was for failure to provide proof of insurance. Those charges were dropped just prior to the lawsuit being filed. Mike Pence has drawn the ire of Mayor Pete Buttigieg. We still call him Mayor Pete, even though he's Secretary of Transportation. But okay, we'll still call him Mayor Pete. Why not? Buttigieg is upset because of a joke that Mike Pence told at a Republican fundraiser. The fundraiser was a roast, and so Pence took a jab at Buttigieg with the intent of it being funny. Buttigieg didn't think it was funny, nor did his husband, so they have been on the talk show circuit talking about it. Buttigieg talked about the joke during an interview with ABC television. That news interview then, a clip of that was leaked to The View. And on that wonderful show, The View, Whoopi Goldberg had the opportunity to share her feelings while introducing the clip. Here's Whoopi.
The White House is calling on former VP Mike Pence to apologize for an attempted joke at last weekend's political roast held by D.C. journalists, the Gridiron Dinner. Pence claimed Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg took 2 months of, quote, maternity leave during the nationwide airline crisis, which makes Pete the only person in human history to have a child, and everyone else gets postpartum depression.
That's the joke.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I will point out that this joke wasn't funny when Tucker Carlson did it. It wasn't funny when Lauren Boebert did it. It's just not funny. It's just not a funny joke. But people are taking issue with Pence using the term maternity leave and making light of postpartum depression. And here's what Secretary Pete told ABC's Gino Benitez. Take a look.
Does Mike Pence owe you an apology?
You know, I'll let others speak to that. You know, it's a strange thing to me because last time I saw him, he asked me about my kids like a normal person would. And I guess, you know, at a political event in white tie, it's a little different. But again, there's not a lot of time for me to focus on the Washington game because we have real work to do here.
A Pence advisor called this faux outrage. But, you know, it's not faux out. I'm mad at you because you weren't smart enough to think of a new joke. That's why I'm outraged. Because it was sloppy and very lazy to use a thrice used bad joke again.
Yeah.
So was this a bad joke or a homophobic slur or both?
All right, now we want to take just a minute here to talk to you about a great event that's coming up. It's Hopefest for Chemo Buddies. And if you've never heard of Chemo Buddies, where have you been? Chemo Buddies does a lot for dealing with providing support and an uplifting atmosphere for people who are going through chemotherapy sessions, and in addition to that, doing a lot for cancer survivors as well. Hopefest is just their big annual event at Friedman Park, and it's a great time. It is a day filled with hope and inspiration. There's a 5K run for those who are into that. There's a car cruise in. There is a survivors parade. If you know somebody who has battled cancer, you want to invite them to go out and then cheer them on in the survivors parade there at Friedman Park. You can get more details at hopefest.net. That's hopefest.net, and we'll put the link, of course, in the show notes for you to be able to go and check that out. Well, we have plenty of bills still moving through the Indiana State Legislature. We are in the second half of the session, and there is just a bunch going on. So I thought we'd talk about a few of those bills and also talk about our local legislators and how they've been doing in this legislative session. First of all, I'll give you the resources that I'm using to come up with this information because this is really, there are two great resources to use on the web. One of those is called Legiscan, and this is a web page that you can go to. It actually gives you a chance to check out legislation in passing in every state, what's moving through their state houses. So when you look at Indiana, the link that I provided for you in the show notes will take you to a list of bills, the ones that are still in play for this year. We started the legislative session, by the way, with over 1,000 bills being introduced. We still have, I believe it's somewhere around 300 bills that are under consideration, and the legislative session ends the end of April. So you can bet that they're going to be moving kind of fast and furious over the course of the next couple of weeks here to get these bills moved through the legislative process. So using those resources, I've been able to find a few things. First of all, I went in to look at what bills have been authored by our local legislators this year. Tim O'Brien, for example, he has authored 8 bills. 2 of those have survived. HB 1575 is establishing a building commission within the Department of Homeland Security. And this building commission on a state basis will review all building codes in the state of Indiana. Brian Hatfield has authored 7 bills. One of those is still in play in the legislative session. That is HB 1252. This is a bill that deals with liability for police officers and others when they're escorting certain people in certain circumstances. Wendy McNamara, she's been busy this legislative session. She authored 10 bills. 6 of them are still under consideration. One of those is HB 1186. This is the encroachment on police bill. What this bill does is it says that if a police officer is involved in police activity, maybe he's arresting somebody or whatever, and in this day and age, everybody gets in the cop's face with their phones so that they can get video to put on the social media. So what this does is it sets a 25-foot perimeter around that officer. So if the officer says, hey, back off, you have to back off to at least 25 feet away from the officer or you're in violation of the law. Cindy Ledbetter from Newburgh, she has authored 8 bills this legislative session. 3 of them are still remaining as potential, and they've moved over into the Senate, so they could move into law. Her primary focus has been on health-related bills. Matt Hofstadler, gotta love Matt. He has authored 1 bill. This is a bill that deals with elections and the paperwork and all of that stuff, record keeping and everything. It was a bill that did not make it into the Senate. It was voted down in the House. But here's the thing about Matt, that I think that Matt is one of those guys who believes in minimal government intrusion, so he's not somebody who's going to crank out a whole lot of bills. Matt is one of those guys who's going to kind of pick a area, and that's going to be that. So I think he's just sticking by his guns and not introducing a whole bunch of legislation in this session. Vanita Becker, state senator, she has authored 17 bills this session. 11 of those bills are still in motion, meaning that they've moved on to the House to be voted on there. One of her primary bills that remains active is Senate Bill 473. This is the bill that would limit discharging stuff into the Ohio River. Protect that river, right? Jim Toms, state senator, he's introduced 15 bills in this legislative session. 7 of those bills are remaining in process, so they're being looked at over on the House side. They include SB 12. SB 12 is the bill about harmful materials to children. Basically, it's preventing pornographic material from being made available in school libraries. There's been a lot of controversy about this bill, and we'll keep an eye on it and see where it goes in the House. Jim also has bills pending that would eliminate the lower speed limit for trucks and have trucks up at the same speed limit as other traffic on the freeway. Also, protecting prosecution for low-stake card games. So those little friendly home poker games got Jim's attention, and he decided that he would go with a bill that would take away some of the penalties involved in those home games. All right, we've looked at some of the bills that have been authored by local legislators. So let's talk about where some bills stand at this point, some of the bills that are continuing to move through the legislative process. And we'll start with talking about SB 480. This is the bill dealing with gender transition procedures for minors. This prohibits a physician or other practitioner from providing gender transitioning procedures to an individual who is less than 18 years of age and prevents them from aiding or abetting another physician or practitioner in the provisions of gender transition procedures for a mayor. I know. There's been a lot of controversy about this and people wanting to just climb all over it. But the reason why we have a division between adulthood and minors or children is really pretty simple. It deals with brain development and maturity levels. Maturity levels, kind of dictate the whole thing of at what age we start allowing a person to drive. When we talk about alcohol use and the age being 21, and this has been disputed back and forth for decades. Remember, there was a time when a person who was 18 could legally buy beer. And then in most states, those laws got rescinded after a while because there were problems, right? But the reason for 21 being that age for alcohol consumption is because of development of the frontal lobe. And it's simple science. Follow the science here. That's all you have to do. And once a person has reached adulthood, okay, fine, do what you're going to do. But as a person whose brain is still developing, let them get to that point of maturity and of brain development before turning them loose to make their own decision on that. Now, SB 40 has moved on to the House Public Health Committee for further consideration. HB 1407 has moved into the Senate as well. This is the parental rights bill. This provides that the state of Indiana or government officials are not able to infringe on the fundamental right of a parent to direct the upbringing, education, health care, and mental health of the parent's child without demonstrating that the infringement is required by a compelling governmental interest of the highest order, as long as recognized in the history and traditions of the state of Indiana. They're saying a mouthful. But what they're saying is decisions about your child should be made by the parent and not by the state. Now, there are provisions here that provides that a child is not a child in need of services due to the child parent, guardian, or custodian referring and raising the child consistent with the child's biological sex, declining to consent to the child receiving any kind of specified medication or medical procedures. So it's not allowing the state or the schools or anybody else to step in and nurture a child or move a child toward hormone blockers or a medical procedure dealing with their sex or gender, that decision is made by the parent, and that's the bottom line. HB 1177, this is moving on through the legislative process. It's a bill dealing with handgun training for teachers. This might surprise some people that this one has stayed alive all the way through the process up to this point. The Senate is considering it now. It creates a specialized firearm safety education and training curriculum for teachers, school staff, and school employees. And it kind of lays out the requirements for that curriculum as well. Keep an eye on it. It's moving through the Senate as we speak. HB 1608. This is the bill that everybody wants to call the Don't Say Gay bill. It's the bill that provides that a school or employee or staff member of a school or a third-party vendor used by the school cannot provide any kind of instruction to a student in kindergarten through grade 3 on human sexuality. It also provides that a school employee or school staff member is not prohibited from responding to a question from a student regarding certain topics. Provides that an employee or staff member of a school may only use a name, pronoun, title, or other word to identify a student that is inconsistent with the student's sex. So in other words, once again, this is basically throwing this into being a parental rights decision, that if the child is requested that they be referred to by a different pronoun, that the school would defer to the parents' wishes in that case and not make a decision on their own. SB 12, Senator Jim Tom's bill regarding material harmful to minors, that's now on the House side being considered and is making headway there. And then there's HB 1569. This is restrictions on Department of Correction provision for gender therapy, is basically saying that no state money is going to be used to perform sex change operations for incarcerated individuals. Okay, so those are just some of the bills. We don't have time to go through all of them because there's still 300 bills floating out there, and we just don't have that kind of time. So my best recommendation is use LegisScan or go to the state website. Excellent stuff there on the state website, and you can look up each bill and not only see where it's at, but what's been changed in it, how it's been revised, what the vote has been, who's voted for and who's voted against the bill. You can find all of that information on the state legislative website. The link, again, is appearing in our show notes. I've got just a couple of quick hits for you here. First of all, Right to Life Banquet is going to be coming up in August. They have announced that Kirk Cameron is going to be the keynote speaker for that banquet. So contact Right to Life for your opportunity to get tickets for Kirk Cameron. Should be good. University of Evansville is hosting a Pride Camp this summer. I remember when we used to do youth resources would hold camps every year, and it was just always such a wonderful time. But now it's Pride Camp taking place. And the money, by the way, to put together Pride Camp is from Eli Lilly, even though they're still charging $700 per student to attend the camp. All right, thanks again for joining us this week. Be sure to subscribe so that you catch all of the episodes of This Week in Evansville. Next week is going to be an incredible show. We're going to post it on Wednesday, and it is going to be Rob Myers coming in to talk with me about the mayor's race, and that race is heating up. It is going to be, you want to buy popcorn and have it ready for this mayoral race, because there's some wild stuff that is already starting to fly around. And it's going to just continue to build as we get closer to Election Day. So join me here with Rob on Wednesday. And then in the weeks that follow that, we'll have an opportunity to talk to each one of the mayoral candidates individually. So you don't want to miss out on these upcoming episodes of This Week in Evansville. Thanks. We'll see you next time.